Before we get into talking about the good and bad of teams, not to throw a big curveball at you, what do you make of the Von Miller stuff?
Well, it's not great. I mean, there's no other way to slice it. I guess the team is going to do their due diligence and figure out what's going on, but the allegations are awful and horrendous, and we'll see where it goes from here. We have had situations where things change dramatically, but for the moment, I think the Bills are doing what they have to do, and that they're letting the authorities handle it. And I think that's the best way for everyone to proceed until we know anything else.
The fascination for me, Trey, is that this was, and I know this is this is a human issue. This is not a sport issue. But this was supposed to be a really big year for the Buffalo Bills. This was supposed to be, their crowning time. They were going to challenge for the AFC Championship. They were going to be in that same echelon with Kansas City. But it just hasn't happened.
Well, it's very strange because Mark Schlereth and I have been talking about this since the beginning of the preseason. Something's just not right in Buffalo. Like, for example, they're 6-6, and they have a plus 100 point differential against their opponents. That's almost impossible. I saw this from my old folks at ESPN Stats and Info on the Eagles game. They had 500 yards of offense, converted 10 first downs, third downs into first downs, actually 13, and won the turnover battle. They're the first team since the AFL-NFL merger of 1970 to have those stats and lose a game. So whatever the soup is in Buffalo, it has not come together this year. It started with the Stephon Diggs stuff. And by the way, in the offseason when there and he wasn't there, there was a big deal. It wasn't a big deal. And then a couple of times in that game in Philadelphia on the key third downs, they didn't even have Diggs on the field, which I thought was very unusual. And so something is not right. And this latest incident with Von Miller is just another thing that it's just sort of perplexing. This team should be much better than its record.
Trey, I've listened to people talk, people that know a whole lot more about football than me. And as great as Josh Allen has been, there's a school of thought out there that they don't trust him at certain times. Like if you had to pick a quarterback to make a play in the fourth quarter, Mahomes, Hurts, they would come before Josh Allen. As dynamic and as great as he has been at times, there's a small school of thought out there from people that say, I'm not sure I trust him. And it has nothing to do with his like how hard he plays or his passion or anything like that. Maybe his decision making, but he wouldn't be the first guy. Just your thoughts on something like that.
Well, listen, here's the only way I can answer that honestly. I think they trust him too much in terms of the offense and how it's called, right? I don't see a high level of sophistication in the offense. It's basically, okay, Josh, carry us.
Do your thing.
Yeah, and sometimes when you have that sort of freedom and responsibility, you try and overdo things. Like Josh Allen is a touchdown machine. There's no question about it. He's also a turnover problem.
Yeah.
He has the most turnovers, he has most turnovers by far this year in the NFL. And since he came into the NFL in 2018, he has the most turnovers in the NFL. So you have to look at why that is. To me, I don't think I completely trust the offense they're asking Josh to run, because they're basically saying, do everything. If it's not there, I mean, and he did everything in that first half against the Philadelphia Eagles. My God, he was a one-man wrecking crew.
So Trey, is that his recklessness? Is it a lack of maturity? What is it that has him make those key mistakes?
I think that everybody, when they feel like they have to do everything, sometimes forces the issue.
Okay.
Like, for example, in that game against Philadelphia, the Eagles had just scored to cut it to a 3-point game. And it was at that moment where Josh tried to force a pass in between two defenders on the left sideline, and it got intercepted. And that allowed the Eagles to take the lead. And that really changed the momentum of that game completely. And yes, the Bills went down and tied it or took the lead. And then the Eagles came down and touched it and scored it and went to overtime. And we saw what happened there. But from my perspective, I feel like the burden they're asking Josh to carry is almost too much.
To be the devil's advocate, though, since they got rid of Ken Dorsey, they have been able to score better. They are a little more open in their offense, and their defense sucks. And this is supposed to be Sean McDermott's strength.
Yeah. Again, sometimes it's stupid little things that really have nothing to do with, like, this is why, to me, football is the most team-friendly or team-dependent sport, right? You can take any other sport you want. Let's start with hockey, because this is a Canadian podcast.
Good idea.
You could have a decent team or a bad team, but if you have a good goalie, it really doesn't matter, right? The goalie is the great equalizer in hockey and sometimes in soccer, right? A good team can be undone by a bad goalie, and a bad team can be carried by a good goalie. Baseball is basically a pitcher versus batter confrontation, and whatever happens in that situation, other people are or are not involved. Basketball is a sport where you can have two players out of the five be really good, and the other three can be mediocre, and you can still be a very good team. That is not football. Football is the most team and teammate dependent sport there is. Everybody has to be on the same page. Like, for example, on that throw to Gabe Davis that would have given them a touchdown, which would have required the Eagles to have a touchdown to tie the game. Josh saw one thing in that situation. He thought he was going to break in off the cornerback, and Gabe read breaking out. He was wide open for a touchdown that probably would have won Buffalo the game, but Josh went inside and Gabe went outside. And sometimes those little things are the difference between a team being 8-4 with a 100-point differential, or 6-6 with a 100-point differential.
Yeah.
So that leads me to the other team that I think that we've all been impressed with this season, and that's Jacksonville.
Yeah.
And gosh, Doug Peterson must be a damn good coach.
Yeah, he can coach.
Must be. Yeah, he is. And
for what they've done.
You're seeing the difference in Jacksonville when having a real coach and having a phony coach in Urban Meyer. And right. I want to be clear, I say phony on the NFL level. Urban Meyer is a great college football coach. If he wanted to go back, he'd be a great college football coach again. But coaching boys as opposed to coaching men is very, very different. And the litany of ridiculous errors, mental errors, unforced errors upon himself that he had in his short time in Jacksonville was preposterous. This is a really good team, and Doug Peterson is a Super Bowl winning coach. He beat the Patriots when they were the peak Patriots with a backup quarterback in the Super Bowl and Nick Foles. I mean, this guy can coach. He's really, really good at what he does. So what you're seeing from Jacksonville, by the way, is also picking the right quarterback. Let's just go back to the 2021 draft. Five quarterbacks taken in the top 10. Trevor Lawrence, good. Zach Wilson will probably never start another football game in the NFL unless it's by injury. Number 2. Number 3, Trey Lance, the third string quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys right now. Number 4 was Justin Fields, and people are wondering if the Bears need to start things all over again. And then the other one is Mac Jones, who has probably started his last game in the foreseeable future for the New England Patriots. They picked the right quarterback, and they have a good coach. Those two things usually go a long way in helping you.
And Sunday, I tell you what, last Sunday, there weren't a bevy of great games.
No.
But there were at least two. The Bills and the Eagles was spectacular. So was Jacksonville and Houston.
Yep.
And it was so much fun to watch both of those young quarterbacks. And holy smokes, CJ Stroud actually gave them a chance to win at the end of the game still, which makes Houston one of those teams that they're going to scare a lot of people between now and the end of the regular season and in the playoffs, aren't they?
Well, it's interesting because if you looked at the AFC South in August and you'd say, well, Jacksonville's clearly going to run away with this division. And they might over the final stretch of games. But right now, Jacksonville is in as the division leader. Gardner Minshew and the Indianapolis Colts are sitting at 7, and just outside the playoff hunt right now are the Houston Texans. So this game's coming up this Sunday between the Texans and the Broncos is going to be critical because they're 8-9 right now in the seeding in the playoff picture in the AFC, and the Buffalo Bills are 10. Buffalo's in real trouble. I don't see a clear path for them to get to the postseason. But this little game coming up Sunday between Denver and Houston is suddenly a huge, huge football game.
How do you explain the worm turning in Denver the way it has? Is this just two guys actually getting on the same page and understanding each other?
Well, more than that, because I do think that Sean has sort of force-fed Russell to do what he's been doing. But to me, the offense is not why Denver is where they are. Remember, they gave up 70 points, either week 2 or week 3, on defense to the Miami Dolphins. I mean, a 40 burger's bad. A 50 burger's horrendous. No one ever gives up 60. 70 is a unicorn sitting on a rainbow with a pot of gold, and, you know, a Yeti is talking to him. Like, that never happens, okay? What Sean Payton and Vance Joseph, to his credit as a defensive coordinator, he believed in the players he had. He got rid of some players. He started playing the younger players, and the system started to work. Look, right now, you could make an argument that Denver's defense is playing as well as anybody's defense, and they have been over this 5-game winning streak. Russell and the offense have been sort of an addendum or opportunistic with the opportunities that the defense has presented them. And so to me, the single season turnaround by the Denver defense is clearly the most remarkable turnaround I've seen in a season of football in a long time. And Sean Payton has finally got Russell to just, look, buy into the offense. Don't do the crazy Russell Wilson things unless it's third down or inside of 2 minutes or inside the red zone. Everything else will take care of itself. Don't go nuts until we need you in those situations.